Are you looking to take your personal finances to the next level? Well, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not, with your host, Joseph Sangle.
Well, welcome to the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. My name is Joseph Sangle. We are fired up to help you live a fully funded life. And this is episode number?
191.
Episode 191. We are 9 away from 200 episodes. I am so excited for this particular episode because we're going to talk about one of our financial heroes, teachers, and it's a very special new series we're kicking off.
Yes.
This is the year of series, if you've been listening to the podcast. And so tell everybody what we're going to talk about today.
Yes, so today we're kicking off another series that we'll be focusing on for several different podcast episodes this year, and it's financial authors and teachers. So we're going to share some cliff notes on their books and teachings that have helped us in our financial journey. And today's author, you might have heard of him, is Dave Ramsey.
Right. And we're going to talk about Dave Ramsey and one of the particular books that has influenced me greatly. I should say that the one that is talking is the voice of my co-host, Megan Hibbard, because I didn't introduce you.
That's okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
And since we're in the midst of this podcast and we're doing episode updates and that sort of thing, a lot of people understand that you are on a journey of multiplying your family. And
Yes.
so give an update on the babies.
Yep.
Everything's
so
good?
Everything is good. We're still on track. Probably deliver mid-April.
Mid-April.
That's probably the goal.
Yeah. So here we are. It's the end of February.
I know.
Yeah. That means 6 weeks away. Get fired up.
Ooh.
That is awesome. And so as Megan goes into some very deserved time with brand new babies, we're excited to have these series, talk about different things that we've learned. And you're talking about it from a growing, expanding family. I'm talking about it from a person who's the family has stopped expanding, I hope and pray. And we want to make sure we help people in every area of their financial journey, whether they're just getting started out or they're in retirement. And so today we're going to talk about Dave Ramsey. It's going to be great. But before we do that, you know what time it is. Let's go.
Now it's time to get caught up with our current money events.
The Monday Money Tip Podcast is sponsored by the Fully Funded Life Membership Program. The Fully Funded Life Membership Program provides all you need to begin winning with money and live a fully funded life. Fully Funded Life includes 4 key components: courses, challenges, coaching, and community. Courses provide financial education. Challenges help you make massive progress in a specific money skill. Coaching is provided by the Fully Funded Life Certified Coaches through open office hours held multiple times each month. All of the courses, challenges, and coaching results in an outstanding community that help equip, motivate, and encourage you to take your next financial steps toward your fully funded life. Fully Funded Life, courses, challenges, coaching, community. All that's missing is you. Learn more and receive a special offer for Monday Money Tip listeners today at fullyfunded.life/MMT. That's www.fullyfunded.life/MMT. Okay, today's current money events section is on bankruptcy. Isn't that an exciting topic?
Exhilarating.
Bankruptcy filings fall is the headline. Now, this is from an article that I found, and it's really helpful. It's from justice.gov, from the U.S. Department of Justice, and from the uscourts.gov. And I wanted to read some headlines to people. Does that sound good?
Sounds great.
Yeah. So personal and business bankruptcy filings fell 29.1% for the 12-month period ending September 30th, 2021. A steady decline in filings has continued since COVID-19 began. According to statistics released by the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, the September 2021 annual bankruptcy filings totaled 434,540. That's a lot of people, compared with 612,561 cases in the previous year.
That is more people.
Yeah. Business filings fell 27.9% from 22,391 to 16,140 in the year ending September 30, 2021. Non-business bankruptcy filings fell 29.1% to 418,400 compared to 590,170 in the previous year. Now, this is interesting. And I was sitting there saying, why is that? And I thought I knew, and it turns out I did know, which is pretty good. So I was paying attention. But it says the 12-month percentage drop nearly matched the previous quarterly filings report when new bankruptcies filed in the 12 months ending June 30th, 2021, were 32.2% lower than in June 2020. Now, unemployment temporarily spiked in March 2020 when COVID-19 emergency intensified. Ooh. However, several factors have impacted individuals' decisions about whether to file for bankruptcy since the crisis began. So, for instance, increased government benefits and moratoriums on evictions and certain foreclosures may have eased financial pressures in many households. And so I think it's interesting. We have a chart here. We'll show it to you of the business and non-business filings. And you can see it from 2017 to 2021. And you can see how it was the lowest it's been in the 5 years reported. And then you can see it bankruptcy filings by chapter 7, 11, 12, and 13 for the last 5 years. So we'll put that on the chart. And I think it's interesting when you look at that, and there's different types and chapters of filing. I thought I would share that. Chapter 7 bankruptcy is a liquidation proceeding available to consumers and businesses. And the assets of a debtor that are not exempt from creditors are collected and liquidated, which means reduced to money, and the proceeds are distributed to their creditors. They receive a complete discharge from debt under Chapter 7, except for certain debts that are prohibited from discharge by the bankruptcy code. You know what some of the biggest certain debt is? Student loan debt.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Why does education debt get exempt? I don't understand that.
It's a big one, too.
Because everybody would bankrupt on it, and it would hold schools accountable to helping people get degrees that actually make money. Chapter 11 bankruptcy provides a procedure by which an individual or business can reorganize its debts while continuing to operate. So you hear a lot of companies say we're entering Chapter 11. So that's where they work out new agreements. Mm-hmm. Chapter 12 is for a family farmer or fisherman to file for bankruptcy or reorganize its business affairs and work to repay or reorganize its debts while continuing to operate. And Chapter 13, which is often called a wage earner bankruptcy, is used primarily by individual consumers to reorganize their financial affairs under a repayment plan that must be completed within 3 or 5 years. And so that's something that I just thought I would tell everybody. But the biggest reason why foreclosures fell is because of the moratorium against banks where they could not foreclose. So I wanted to say it's a current money event section moment, because if there's a moratorium, which means they legally cannot do it, well, it means that when they can do it, there's going to be a pent-up set of people who've not paid their payment for months. And there's going to be an increase. In fact, they just came out with a new statistic. I don't have it right in front of me. That shows that in the final quarter of the year, when the moratorium was removed, that bankruptcy filings and foreclosures went way up. So it's on its way, and I would say be aware of this. And this is one of the reasons why we just yell all the time, margin, 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 because even if you have debt, if you have margin, you can navigate your way through a financial challenge. And so we hope that is not you that is going through this process because you've been listening to the podcast. But I wanted to share that information. I think it's interesting. And be on the lookout for 2022. And I'm going to be providing some more information about this in my annual investment update, which is going to be releasing, just in the next month in March. Fired up. That's it for today's current money events section.
Perfect. All right. Our success story today is from Dustin, who attended a financial learning experience at his church. And he wrote us to share the changes and progress that he's made just a couple of months. And he said, we budgeted and still are every month before my check from work comes in. In doing so, we free up enough money because we found out that I like to buy random things.
They found it out. They discovered that.
A lot of people are like you, Dustin, and eat out way too much. So we toned back a bit on the spending, and we're able to get newer, better running cars so my daughter can be safer in her car seat. That's important. We no longer stress about bills because we know exactly where every dollar is going. We're starting a high interest savings here shortly for our daughter and putting at least $25 a month for the next 18 years so that she can have college paid for. I really appreciate everything you've helped us change, and I look forward to becoming like you one day.
Wow.
No.
Wow. That's very nice. Very kind words there. Well, I would just say this about our success story, which this podcast, the Money Tip podcast, is powered by your success. And that's why we love to share a success story, is Dustin writes that he discovered that he likes to buy random things and he likes to eat out way too much. And yet he says he wants to become like me one day. And it sounds like he already is like me. And like millions of other people, I like to buy random things a lot. And in fact, I was recently on a long 10-day trip where we spoke out west 2 times in Wyoming, 2 times in South Dakota. And I bought some random things. And I bought a reindeer pelt. That was the thing.
Yes,
Isn't that awesome? For my son. And then I bought some gold dollars, like paper dollars. Has 1/1000th of an ounce of gold electroplated to it. Cost me, I think, $4. It was amazing.
$4 for $1.
$4 for a $1, 1/1000th of an ounce of gold. Isn't that amazing?
That's something.
But it's just random. I didn't know it existed, and I bought it.
But
Dustin is sharing that they toned back a bit on the spending, and they're able to get a newer, better running car. I like all those things: newer, better, and running. Running is very important, so that the daughter can be safer in her car seat. So they have a little one. And we no longer stress about bills because we know, and he highlighted capital letters, the word exactly. So he understands that income minus outgo equals what?
Exactly 0.
Trademark. And he knows where every dollar is going, and they're starting their high interest savings for their daughter, which is awesome. And I don't know where the high interest one is. It's a higher interest. I hope it's a 529 for college. And Dustin, you're on the way. So we're really fired up for you. Thanks so much for sharing your success story.
Yeah. All right. So today we're kicking off another series that will be focusing on several different podcasts throughout the year. And it's going to be about financial authors and teachers. So we're going to share some cliff notes of one of their books and teachings that have helped us in our own financial journey. And today's author is Dave Ramsey.
Right. And the number one, you'll kind of share them, and then I'll be the play-by-play announcer. So here's one: Dave Ramsey, national syndicated radio show host, has had his own show on TV for many, many years, a couple decades now, came to prominence in the early 2000s, had been doing it for 10 years before that really, but has grown an empire with financial education and subsequently leadership education, and has done a phenomenal job. So the number one reason that we like Dave Ramsey is why?
Yep, because he taught from personal experience.
Right. And so if you've ever listened to Dave for any period of time, he shares a little bit of his story. And I once said that if you want to be used greatly by God, he must first wound you deeply. And because it's out of your wounding that you're more effectively able to minister. And I think when you understand Dave's background, you can understand why some people view him as very aggressive, very in your face. Well, part of that is driven from his personal experience. And I respond well to that. Some people don't. They think it is mean. I view it as passion. And sometimes people misinterpret those.
It's a little intense.
Yeah, but he is intense. But Dave went through his own financial debacle. He built a real estate empire portfolio worth $4 million in his mid-20s, only have the 1986 Tax Act impact the real estate marketplace, not to mention sky-high interest rates. And that resulted in him declaring bankruptcy a few years later. It has something to do with our current money event section.
We just talked about bankruptcy.
Yeah. And many of his friends, as you can imagine, birds of a feather flock together. So he had a lot of friends in real estate. They went through the similar thing. And Dave was seeing it derail lives, marriages, and friendships. And it created a deep frustration and anger that caused him to do something about it. He began counseling people. A local radio station went bankrupt too and couldn't pay their show host. So Dave took a chance and offered to do a money show for free for a month. And this birthed what would ultimately be known as the Dave Ramsey Show, now listened to by millions of people every day. I think it was originally known as the Money Game or something like that. And he had a co-host. But many people have said they're turned off by Dave's direct approach, what they perceive as mean or angry. We are shaped by our circumstances, and I think Dave is still deeply driven by his financial wounds. What many think is mean or angry, I receive as passionate and driven, and it resonates with me. And I really appreciate that Dave has had a personal experience that drives him and constantly reminds him of the challenges being faced yet today by people who lack financial knowledge like he did. And so I think that's really important. And so that's one reason why.
All right. Number 2 is give every dollar a name.
Right. So I'll never forget picking up this book. I'm going to show it on YouTube here. And do you see this book? This is Financial Peace Revisited. So this was
It doesn't even look like him on the back.
Yeah, he's younger. People age. Did you know that?
I
don't look like myself 20 years ago.
I know, but I feel like you at least look like a younger version of you. That looks like somebody totally different.
It's Dave. I can see Dave there, and his lovely wife Sharon. And it's interesting in this book. I think this is a redo of Financial Peace, maybe the original book. This is revisited. This is the one I bought in 2002, and was one of the ones that helped me really get my finances in order. And I think it's interesting as I go through this book here. She writes. He had her add her own thoughts about each thing that he shared in here. But when I read this book, what really resonated with me, and I've been rereading it again just to say, read it again 20 years after I first read it to see how it affects me today. And I find myself going back and saying, the thing that stands out the most is to give every dollar a name. Now, when I read this book in December of 2002, I was right at the point where I had enough. And I read this book and I handed it to Jen and said, here, you read this book and we're going to do a lot of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And it took me and Jen actually 6 months from that moment to actually put together a budget. But the thing that had resonated with me, I didn't know how to do it. Hadn't connected all the dots. Must not have read it good enough or something. But this idea of giving every dollar a name intentionally on purpose before you spend it, before you're even paid it, that was a new concept in our household. Mm-hmm. We were, let's spend money and hope we don't spend it all. I don't know if you've ever seen people try that approach. Yeah. It's usually not as effective. And when I finally got that happening, that budget, and we became debt-free in 14 months, except for our house, 2 years after I read the book, I was actually leading the course that is birthed out of this, Financial Peace University. But that idea of giving every dollar a name. So you give every dollar a name. Yeah. Yeah. And you've been influenced by giving every dollar a name. And can you imagine somebody saying you're not allowed to do that? You have to just kind of figure it out as you go?
Yeah, I think it would be, it would make budgeting a whole lot harder because how would you know where the money was going? How would you know what you're supposed to spend on what? And, if you have this much, I'm very much I'm a rule follower. So I like having this much is allocated towards this, and it gives you the freedom to be able to spend that much money. So I like buying things for Logan, and I like, being able to now buy things for the twins and that kind of stuff. And so I have that, you don't have to feel guilty about, I'm going to pick this up because I know I have that money allocated for that each month. Right.
And giving every dollar a name, it brings a level of what we call around here financial confidence.
Yeah.
That you're confident. I know I have money to spend on Logan. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking for you.
I was like, you can buy Logan things if you want to.
Yeah.
He would
sure.
Like that.
I've got a thing for him.
He loves
Bring
Mr.
him to the
Joe.
office. I'll give him something. I've got 2 things I'll give him. But when you give every dollar a name, then you can buy a thing for your child. Mm-hmm. You can buy a thing for your spouse. You can buy a thing for you. And you have confidence in 2 things. One is you have money allocated for that. And number 2, that you're not taking away from something else that is important.
Yeah, like a bill.
Yeah, like a bill that has to be paid. And giving every dollar name, really, I paired it because at the same time I was reading this book, Financial Peace Revisited, which, by the way, is my favorite book that Dave has written, that I've read of his books. And I don't even know if you can buy it anymore because it's 20 years old. And I know he's released several books after My Total Money Makeover, all that. But when I started reading that, and then I was reading the Bible, and I found that verse, Proverbs 21:5, which became my financial life verse, that says, the plans of the diligent lead to profit, as surely as haste leads to poverty. When I saw that if you had a plan and you were diligent to follow the plan, you would have profit, which means abundance, excess, leftovers, right? More than enough. All of a sudden, it put what he was saying with that together for me was the kind of the penultimate moment that caused us in our household to put together a budget. Yeah. And so I'll never forget the day that I realized I could do a budget, and I ran into our computer room and I got on my Gateway 2000 computer. Are you laughing at me?
With you.
Yeah, with me. Yeah. Did you ever have a Gateway 2000 computer?
No.
You never had one with the cow? Prints. It had Holstein cows, like the Chick-fil-A cow, prints on their box. And they would ship it to you, the Gateway 2000. It was a leading brand back in the day. Oh, yeah. And I went in there, and some people know what I'm talking about. If you know what I'm talking about, I know our producer knows what I'm talking about. If you know what I'm talking about and you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment.
Real quick.
Have you ever had a Gateway? Let's put a picture on there. Let's put a picture for everybody. If you've ever had a Gateway 2000 computer and you know what I'm talking about, tell Megan what's up in the comments. But I put together that budget on my Gateway 2000 computer.
Maybe we just weren't advanced enough in my house.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you were advanced enough in your house. And so I gave every dollar a name in a budget, and we followed it. And it changed our financial trajectory forever. And it's why we say all the time, if you're listening to this podcast, you're one or two major financial decisions away from completely changing the trajectory of your financial future. And so one of those decisions for me was preparing a budget. Awesome. So the number 3 thing that we got from his book is what?
Yep. So motivating.
Motivating. So he wrote this. It's on page 13. I'm going to read it here. It says, our entire nation, now he wrote this in 2002, 20 years ago. Our entire nation is in financial stress at the individual level, at the city and state level, and at the national level. Are you depressed yet? I hope so. I intend for this chapter not to make you feel guilty or simply to leave you hopeless, but instead to get you mad. I want you mad enough to change your life, and mad enough to change your children's lives, and maybe even mad enough to change your city or your country. And you know what's interesting? I want to say to Dave that it did. It made me mad enough. And it started with my own financial turnaround. Then it led me to leading a class at church. Then I started coaching. And then I went full-time teaching, writing, preaching, and coaching in 2006. And I haven't looked back since. And I'm grateful to Dave Ramsey for writing this book because it helped change my life. In fact, after I went full-time at this stuff in 2006, a year later, I got the opportunity to sit in on with Dave on the show for the full 3 hours. And I got to ask him questions, pummeled him with questions during all the breaks. In fact, I have a picture that we can show if you're watching on YouTube of Jen and I with Dave Ramsey. And so it's really one of those monumental moments where I knew that what he was teaching was phenomenal. It had changed my life and changed millions of other people's lives. And the idea of joining his team sounded phenomenal, except for it would require me moving. And number 2, I had written my own resource, and I really felt like, there are different voices for different people, and people respond to voices differently, and that there needed to be more than just one voice. There needed to be more voices. And so he helped me with the decision to self-publish. I was broke, now I'm not. And so I had asked him, hey, I wrote this book. Should I pitch it to publishers? A lot of them have said no, or should I self-publish it? And he and Mark Matterson both were gracious enough to hear my question, answer the question, and say self-publish it. I'll never forget Dave saying, he said, do print it, do write it, and do print it. It's worth it, man. And so I went home and I became an expert like everybody has. And that is, I Googled, how do you self-publish your book? Right. And I became an expert, and the rest, my friends, is history.
And now we have a course.
And now we have a course.
On how to self-publish your book.
On how to self-publish your book. Isn't that amazing?
Yep. All right, so number 4 is cut up the credit cards.
Yes. Many people know Dave Ramsey as the cut up the credit cards and sell the car guy. And the reason being is he just seems to say that nonstop because those are wildly important decisions that are costing people their ability to build wealth. And so in December 2002, that spoke to me because I was a spender, just like our success story, Dustin, overspending a lot. And so Jenny and I, we chopped up our credit cards, all of them, not all but one. And then we took the bold step of calling the credit card company and shutting down the accounts. And I'll never forget, the last one was Capital One. And they said, "Do you want to shut the account down?" I'm like, "Yes." And they said, "Well, this will affect your credit score." Ooh, creepy. And then they said, "Now, you've been a very excellent customer." And I'm like, "I bet I have."
That's why I'm shutting it
And I said,
off.
"Shut it down." And so we shut it down, and we lived for 6 years without a credit card. Subsequently, we went back and got a credit card. How many dollars in interest do you think we've paid since? None dollars. Yeah. How many fees for late payments? None dollars. And that's because in those 6 years, we instituted new habits, healthy financial habits that helped us prosper. Yeah. And so just wanted to say thanks to Dave for being diligent and doing this for 30 years. Can't wait to see what the next 30 years is produced out of Ramsey Solutions. Great work, great book. Encourage you to read this one, Financial Peace Revisited. I view it as Dave Ramsey in the earlier raw days, and I like that a lot.
Yep. All right. Our quote from today is from Dave Ramsey, and it says, "Live like no one else, so you can live like no one else."
Yeah, I love that.
I'm like, did I read that part right?
Yeah, he phrased it like, live like no one else, so you can live like no one else. And he's really saying, live like no one else will right now.
Yeah.
Which means saying no to yourself, not now, wait, delayed gratification. So later, well, you can live like no one else.
That's right.
Yep, it's awesome.
All right, so our next episode, we're gonna continue our series on money lies. So what we're talking about then in that episode is going to be, this is no big deal. So maybe you've said that when you're spending money or when you're keeping something from your spouse or something like that, and you say, this is no big deal, keep it to myself. So
yeah, we're going to talk about that. It's going to be a big one. I love the Money Lies series. Hey, if you like today's episode, help us get this podcast to other people who could benefit. You can do this by quickly rating the podcast, leaving us a review. And those rating and reviews help us make the podcast better for all of our listeners. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure you click the thumbs up or thumbs down button if you don't like it, and leave a comment, especially on that Gateway 2000 computer thing. And if you've implemented one of our tips, share your success stories with us by emailing it to info@iwbnin.com. That's info@iwbnin.com, or you can share it with us on any of our social media platforms. And so, hey, until next week, hey, pick up this book, read it, and learn from it. I find that in the abundance of counselors, plans succeed. Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Monday Money Tip Podcast, presented by I Was Broke, Now I'm Not. If you enjoyed today's episode, please leave a review and subscribe. And for more great content and to stay up to date, visit iwbnin.com. We'll catch you next time.